Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk for a complete change about Halo Infinite's campaign. I want to talk about both the past, the present, and also the future of the campaign, or rather campaigns, plural, things that I'd like to see changed, added, and the like. This is meant to just be like a constructive video about the future of Infinite's campaigns, so I say we waste no more time and jump into the juicy bits. Starting out, I want to talk about a few things that I would have personally done differently in the base campaign for Halo Infinite. First off is one that I've seen a lot of people talk about, the Infinity. I would have loved the cutscene at the start of the game to have instead been a playable section where we fight on the Infinity as it goes down. Don't get me wrong, that cutscene was incredible, but I just think it would have been better if we could actually play it and experience it for ourselves. I did like how the first mission, Warship Gabrakan, kind of flipped the Halo trope on its head, and instead of your ship being boarded, you boarded an enemy ship. It was a nice change of pace, but the raid on the Infinity was such an important and cataclysmic event that I can't help but feel at least in some part it should have been playable. And I think as well you could have still had the level end with the Atriox cutscene, but having such an important and honestly epic event transpire in a way that is totally out of the player's control to experience wasn't the best idea. I at least would have liked some of this segment to be playable. Next up, I would have liked to see more of the Harbinger. I know that the Harbinger was really just kind of like a vessel character that is used to introduce the Endless, but I really enjoyed her mysteriousness and I just wish that we got more of her. I think killing off such a seemingly important character so early seems like a little bit of a waste. I think it would have been interesting to see how she would interact with the Endless, because at the end of the day, she's the one that is finally responsible for freeing them. I think that could have been a cool interaction, but I just wish we got more of her. I would have also liked to have seen more Jaeger Domni, specifically more encounters with Jaeger Domni. Now, when Escharum ordered him to follow Chief, I thought we were going to get some kind of scenario where Chief realizes, or maybe even the weapon realizes, that they're being followed, or at the very least, like a, I don't know, Easter egg cameo or something where you can see his camo glistening in the sun in the background of a cutscene, or in like a one specific environment or something. Just some indication to show that he was on your trail the entire time, but sadly we didn't get that. I just think for a character that had such a cool concept and design and execution, it was just a bit of a shame that the only time we saw him in gameplay was during his boss fight where we rather quickly dealt with him. It was such a cool concept and I really wish he was present more throughout the game. Still crossing my fingers for a Jaeger Domni prequel DLC though. A guy can hope. And then on the same note, I would have also loved to have seen more of Hyperius and Tavares as well. I mean, they make up literally half of the Hand of Atriox in the game, and yet they have no presence or even a slight cameo at all in a cutscene besides, like, Hyperius' dead body, right? It's just such a shame that both of them had such great designs, and yet we barely had anything from them. They only just appear in the boss fight arena. I think it was Tavares speaks to you for like 30 seconds over a radio, and that's it. That's the last we see of them. They just felt really oddly absent from the entire narrative. In fact, I don't think Escharum even mentions their names once, which is just peculiar. Okay then, now with that little segment out of the way, I just wanted to briefly talk about some things that I would have changed about the main campaign, but now it's time for the good meat of the video, the Wagyu steak of the video, if you will. The brisket of the video, actually, that's more fitting. The stuff that I'd like to see changed in future campaigns for Halo Infinite, changed, added, altered, removed, etc, etc. So, the first thing is I'd love to see future DLCs and campaigns have more of a connection to the Infinity and her crew. And there's one character in particular that I want this to happen for. Captain Thomas Lasky. Now, Halo Infinite's story was very small in its scope. It focused only on really 5 main characters, and I think this was probably in response to Halo 5, which focused on like tried to focus on like 15 main characters, which was partly to blame for the cluttered narrative. And don't get me wrong, this was great. It made for a really cool story that was really able to flesh out its main characters, unlike Halo 5, but we've done that now. And so now, with future DLCs, I want to see the Zeta Halo narrative kind of open up a little bit and start to reconnect with the wider Halo universe, and I think the best place to start with that is relatively close to home, with the Infinity crew that are still on Zeta Halo, starting off with Captain Lasky. Now, I've gone over quite a few times in other videos why I like Lasky so much, but just to very briefly sum it up, Lasky to me always felt like a real humanizing kind of anchor for Chief, and after what Chief went through in Infinite's campaign, I think this would be a perfect time to reintroduce him. Oh, and also one request for if/when Lasky does appear, give us Punish Lasky, have him like have a beard, scars on his face, and armed with a shotgun or something. Give us a really cool, like, kind of rejuvenated design for him that shows all the stuff that he's been through on the ring, and I'll be a very happy guy. Something else that I'd like to see future campaigns kind of move away from is one-take cutscenes. Now, I did like these in Infinite Story, and I think they worked for the more insular story that it tried to tell, but only having one-take cutscenes is really restrictive. You can't do establishing shots, you can't set up scenes or set up environments with shots that show you the wider environment or show you other things going on in the environment before, during, or after you get there. And it also eliminates the ability to do certain styles of cutscenes that require vastly different camera angles to work, like, for example, the intro to the Covenant in Halo 3, or the intro to Sacred Icon in Halo 2. There's so many examples for this. I mean, hell, could you imagine how much less impactful Chief giving the Covenant back their bomb would have been if it couldn't have had the variety of camera angles that it had that showed off the insane scale of the naval conflict that was going on in Earth's orbit between the humans and the Covenant, while Chief was quite literally flying through the middle of it through the explosions and the debris. Without various different camera angles, you couldn't really get the sense of scale, and just the cutscene just wouldn't be as cool, right? I think that goes without saying. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like the one-take cutscenes. I feel like they created a more insular story, and I like that. I really like insular segments of stories in games and movies and TV shows, etc. But I feel like these insular and more narrow scope sections are better and more impactful when they're contrasted with more large and grandiose segments. Like, for example, think how 343 Guilty Spot contrasted with the Silent Cartographer, or how Cortana in Halo 3 contrasts with the Covenant. Two very different styles and atmospheres. These insular sections that are very toned down feel far more significant coming off the back of other more grandiose sections that are much bigger in scale and have so many more moving parts. And I think partly the one-take cutscenes is to blame for that, because you've got to constantly anchor the camera to something, and you've always got to have these smooth, fluid movements. There can never be any cuts or changes in a scene like immediately, which I think hurts how they set up these scenes and how cutscenes can really be designed. I feel like when the scope is permanently narrow, like how it was with Infinite's cutscenes, the atmosphere that the style of insular storytelling creates is kind of weakened, and it just doesn't feel as impactful because it's the only atmosphere in the game. It's nowhere near as good as when it's contrasted with the polar opposite, right? I don't know if anything I just said made any sense. It made sense in my mind, but that doesn't mean it makes sense on paper. Let me know down below in the comments. I also don't think that relying solely on such a personal style of camera work is very conducive to the previous point that I made about reconnecting with the UNSC Infinity crew in the wider universe, right? It worked with how small scale Infinite's campaign was, but as that scale starts to increase, I don't know if that camera style will work. I don't want it to be gone completely. I do think it has merit, and I think it'd be great to keep it around for certain sections, but don't just solely rely on it. Okay then, this next one we're not going to spend too much time on because I think every single human being that ever exists is on the same page with this. Biomes. I really want to see more biomes in future DLCs. I think this is almost guaranteed to happen, to be honest, but Halo really isn't the same without icy tundras and dense jungles and vast deserts, and it's also more about just a change of scenery as well. Each biome also creates unique contrasts with the structures that are built in them. Forerunner, Banished, UNSC ruins, Covenant stuff, all this stuff contrasts very differently with each different biome, which just adds to the freshness. Ultimately, I want to see an entire campaign level designed around Behemoth, because Behemoth still looks absolutely incredible. And kind of on that point, another thing that I'd really like to see is a wider variety of Forerunner locations and structures and facilities, particularly in the linear levels. Now, I think this is probably one of the biggest complaints about Infinite's campaign. Everyone, whether they loved the game or really didn't love it, was kind of on the same page that the linear levels inside Forerunner structures were pretty repetitive, and I don't want future DLCs to suffer from that. The lack of variety in Infinite's levels definitely showed when you played it, but when you go back and play one of the older games and then play Infinite again, it really shows. Even a game like Combat Evolved, that was criticised by quite a few people for having rather repetitive areas, specifically in the Forerunner locations, feels like it has more variety in its Forerunner environments than Infinite. It has massive caves and chasms, underground island facilities, cliffside hallway mazes and connecting bridges, creepy swamp facilities, massive libraries, etc, etc. There's quite a lot there. Combat Evolved may repeat its rooms quite a few times, yes, but its foreigner strictures vary massively from location to location, which I think takes quite a lot of the monotony out of the repetitiveness. It's just such a shame that with how good Infinite's foreigner art style is, the only real variation we get is in the Silent Auditorium and maybe Foundations as well, and even then there are still repeated rooms in both of those levels. Something else I wish was used a little bit more was a sense of scale inside the foreigner facilities. The exteriors definitely had this, the spires looked fantastic, but the interiors in particular at times lacked this, where previous games and even some levels in Infinite definitely didn't. Like, for example, Foundation and Nexus both have great examples of interior scale, but then some of the other levels kind of just feel like narrow hallways. And on the point of foreigner stuff, let's talk about one thing that I really wanted to see in this game but we didn't end up getting, but I will never stop talking about it until we get them. Halo 3 styled terminals. Zeta Halo's dark history with the Foreigners, the Flood, the Ancient Humans, the Primordial, the Precursors, Mendicant Bias, etc, etc, just make it the perfect location for Easter eggs that tie back in with this era of the Ring's history, and super cryptic, eerie Easter eggs like Halo 3's terminals are just the perfect way to do that. There was just something about these terminals, the combination of the way that they were animated, the information they were presenting it, and how they presented that information, the sound design, the corrupted text, just all of it added to the eeriness and the mystery of, at the time, the Ark. But honestly, I feel like this style of terminal is fit even better for Zeta Halo than it was for the Ark, with its dark, mysterious history and the fact that also, as we learnt of in Point of Light, many of the events that occurred on the Ring were purposefully purged from the Ring's archives. It's the perfect candidate for more of these terminals. Please 343, add them back, I'm begging you. Right then, switching gears for a few seconds, there's something else that I'd really like to see more of in Halo Infinite's campaign DLCs that actually didn't really come to mind until I got the Halo Infinite art book and was flicking through it and saw something really cool. I really want to see more of the Hand of Atriox. The Hand of Atriox were a really cool concept, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that in Halo Infinite we didn't wipe all the members of it out. I mean, surely there's more than 4 members in it, right? You'd think. Honestly, I think that they'd make for a great mainstay element of the Banished as a faction, and could almost continue to be the source of all the major Banished bosses that we face in the future. Like, every DLC has like 1 or 2 Hand of Atriox bosses that we have to kill. Now, as I said, this came to my mind when I was flicking through the Infinite concept art book, and there's a reason for that. There's a piece of concept art in that book for a skirmisher Hand of Atriox member, or Spartan Killer as they're called, and it looked really cool, and it got me thinking, like, it's a shame that the only Hand of Atriox members we got were 3 brutes and 1 elite. There are so many more species out there to have Hand of Atriox members be, and I think it'd be a shame if that potential wasn't fulfilled. I'd love to see skirmisher bosses, jackal bosses, grunt goblin bosses, hunters, etc, etc. I think getting actual characterized Hand of Atriox members from all of these species would be fantastic in the future. It'd flesh out the species, it'd create more great bosses, it'd flesh out the Hand of Atriox and the Banished, etc, etc. Lots of fleshing out and lots of cool stuff would come from that. Right then, switching gears once again, I want to talk about the vehicles and the vehicle set pieces, because the game needs better versions of these and more of them. This is something that the main campaign was just extremely lacking, and I'm really hoping DLCs rectify. Besides the vehicle section on the road, there's no designated vehicle level or set piece in the open world or anything like that that encourages the use of vehicles. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the grapple hook, but I think the grapple is partly to blame for this because it just makes traversing the world so much easier and smoother than getting in a vehicle and driving off. And furthermore, Marines can't even drive vehicles in this game, nor will they even sit on the side of your Scorpion anymore, so your approach to vehicle combat is inherently far more limited than practically every other game in the series. Epic vehicle sections are a staple of Halo. Having you and your allies all mounted up in heavy armor ready to blast through enemy defenses has created so many great moments. Assault on the Control Room, the Mombasa Bridge, the Ark, the Covenant, Infinity. It's just such a shame that Infinite's base campaign didn't have any moments like these. The closest was the Road, which was decent, but not amazing. I think though, for this to be a feature that actually kind of works and is semi-fun, Infinite's vehicles need a total rebalance. Infinite's vehicle sandbox is down bad, as we say nowadays. It's probably the worst vehicle sandbox so far in Halo, to be quite honest with you, both in its variety and its balance. The vehicles are made out of paper mache, there's not that much variety, the Razorback is a fantastic addition, but there's no co-op air vehicle at all. I really think that rebalancing vehicle health and damage, and also the addition of several cooperative-based vehicles like the Falcon or the Spectre, etc., are needed to make these vehicle sections actually worthwhile. But if those changes are made, and those additions are made, and those sections are added, then I'd be really happy. And for my penultimate point, on the same kind of note, I really want more allied presence in future DLCs. Again, I think the lack of Marines on missions in Halo Infinite is probably another symptom of the more insular, chief-focused story that 343 were trying to tell. But once again, now that story's out of the way, can we please have Marines be present in the linear levels again? Because they just weren't at all in this game. Of course they had the occasional open world appearance, but at no point in linear levels do you ever fight alongside Marines. There's no equivalent to those heavily Marine focused missions that really made you feel like you were fighting as a part of a military, like Pillar of Autumn, or Cairo Station, or Crow's Nest, or Infinity, etc, etc. I also would have liked to have seen some allied elites as well. Now I'm pretty sure there aren't any on the Infinity that we know of at least, but I'm sure that could be very easily changed. The Infinity staff is like, what, 8,000 people? I'm sure you could add like 5 or 10 elites in there somewhere. I just can't stop thinking about how cool it would have been to rescue some Swords of Sanghelios stranded elites on Zeta Halo and have them fight alongside you alongside the Marines. And whilst we're on about variety as well, where the hell were the ODSTs? 343 are yet to make a game, Halo Wars 2 notwithstanding, that actually features ODSTs. Halo 4, Halo 5, and now Halo Infinite. None of them feature ODSTs, which is just so weird considering how much of a fan favourite element of Halo the ODSTs are. But for a little bit of hopium, this is something that could definitely tie back in with my first point once again, about reconnecting with the Infinity crew. ODSTs were stationed on the Infinity, so who's to say that when we start regrouping with them, we don't run into ODSTs again? My fingers are crossed very, very hard. And for my final point, we have something that's a bit out of left field, but it's something that I really, really hope that we see more of. Puzzles. Now, the furthest they went with puzzles in the game was like the power seed things to unlock doors, and let's be honest, they weren't puzzles, they were more like mere hurdles to just slow down your progression of the linear levels. Now, this might seem a little bit over the top, but I was genuinely hoping for like some Resident Evil style puzzles in the world to unlock secret Forerunner rooms or facilities or weapon caches or something like that. In case I haven't already made it abundantly clear on this channel, I am a massive fan of Resident Evil, and also, by extension, I'm also a massive fan of well-executed puzzles in free roam games that unlock secrets or help progress the player in different ways. There's nothing more satisfying than finally completing a puzzle that you were stuck on without any external help, unlocking a secret room or finding a secret weapon or something, and I really feel like that kind of gameplay loop would fit really well into Halo Infinite with the open world. I don't really have much to say on this point, I just know that I'd really like to see some Resident Evil caliber puzzles in Halo Infinite DLC at some point. And so, that about does it for my thoughts on the past and the future of Halo Infinite's campaign, things that I'd like to see changed, added, altered, removed, etc, etc. Like I said at the start, let me know your thoughts and things that you'd like to see added or changed or whatever down below in the comments. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things that you'd like to see. Also, one thing I forgot, scarabs. Can we get some scarab, please? Thank you very much. I would love some banished scarabs. So, with that final point out of the way, let's round this video out. I want to give a massive thank you to all of my amazing patrons for the continued support over there as per usual, and thank you all so much for watching, I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you all in the next one.